Now, there are going to be some people that we're going to have to release along the way, and some people are going to be leaving on their own. But I believe that, if you stay, or for those who stay, we've got a real shot at this. So there's got to be a new narrative that you got to develop, and that brings hope to all those around you and to yourself.
Hey, and welcome to the Tarun Stevenson Leadership Channel, where we're helping you lead, communicate, and grow to your full potential. I'm your host, Tarun Stevenson. Whatever portal you are tuning in on, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, your favorite podcast, or Instagram, make sure you subscribe and follow so you don't miss any of our episodes. Let's get into it. Welcome. I'm here with George Pappachen, and he is from Amazon. He is the member of the General Council in ad serving and strategic management. Have I got that right, George?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm GC for a part of the Amazon advertising business.
Fantastic. Welcome to the show. So good to have you. Now, I was introduced to you by a mutual friend of ours, Evan Pete from Bridge Community Church, and he said, look, you've got to talk to George. He is such an interesting guy. You just cannot go past talking to him. So here we are. Thank you so much. It's great to meet you finally.
Nice to meet you too, Taryn. And not to just return the favor, but Evan says similar things about you.
Ah, well, lovely. It's nice. We can pump each other's tires up together.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. Well, we've been having a little bit of a chat before this interview just about some of your background, and you've had a really interesting background in the tech industry. And I want you to tell us a little bit about a story that you were relating to me about your time with Seismic, which was a tech company in the advertising space or ad delivery space. And we've titled this interview Leading Through Adversity, because you had some pretty big challenges when you came on with Seismic. They were going through some really major change. So why don't you give us a background, tell us about Seismic, and then tell us about what you came into when you joined that company.
Okay, I'll even start one before that.
Okay, please.
I'll say, just some background on me. I'm a lawyer by training, played it safe, and professional career type of thing, and a stable sort of environment, and worked at big companies for a long time. But I moved up the ladder and met several people who were, who sold their companies to bigger companies. So when I was part of a bigger company at one time, and met a number of people who, sold their companies to that bigger company, and so made friends with them. And over time, when they went out and started a new business or became CEOs of some other business, we'd keep in touch, and sometimes they'd call me, right, to say, hey, I've got a role for you, and what do you think? So that's kind of a quick background on me. So lawyer by training, went into big companies. Moved up the ladder from a lawyer, in the legal department but also on the business side. So I manage businesses within bigger companies. So Seismic, SIZMEK, is a technology company. So what they do is they deliver advertising on the web and in apps. So when people don't realize, a lot of people don't realize all the activity that happens behind the scenes when you go to a web page and the page loads. Within the 1 second, between you putting in the URL for that site and the site content loading, there's probably 1,000 different activities that are happening. And there's also an auction that happens behind the scene as to who will deliver the ad at what price for that page that's loading, assuming there are ads on the page.
Is that right?
Okay. There's a programmatic auction, just like you would have in a securities market. There's a programmatic auction, and the winner of the auction delivers the ad. All that auction happens within a fraction of a second.
Okay, so that's what, like when you're seeing Google AdWords and things like that,
Exactly.
the process that delivers those ads is the behind the scenes stuff that you were dealing
That's right.
with.
Well, in Google AdWords, remember, there's an auction system that's deciding who wins.
Yes.
So similarly, but Google AdWords is relatively straightforward. Google decides who wins.
Okay.
But when you are on a different site, there's a lot of bidders for that advertising. and then there are mechanisms that decide who wins among all these bidders.
Right. Okay.
Our technology is not involved in that. Our technology, although I'm very familiar with it and I worked in that space, our technology comes in when somebody's won. A
Yeah.
thousand people have been bidding. Somebody won the bid,
Yeah.
and now it's time to deliver the ad into that window on a web page where the ad has to fit. Everywhere
Right.
else it's content, but there's room for an ad somewhere, and the ad has to fit perfectly. So your technology has to discern the dimensions of that particular page,
Yeah.
has to discern the dimensions of the content around it, and deliver the ad into that space in a way that it doesn't interrupt the consumer's experience, at least didn't interrupt it too much.
Right.
So our technology, the seismic technology, is ad serving technology. It delivers the ad copy or the creative, whatever it is, video, rich media, text, native, whatever it is, into that window. So
Right.
that's the business. And I joined Seismic because a friend of mine um, became the CEO of Seismic.
Right.
Seismic was maybe, I don't know, 1,800 employees around the world, in about 28, 30 countries. Top line revenue at the time of, I don't know, somewhere a little less than $1 billion. He uh, joined Seismic as CEO because Seismic was at one point in time publicly traded,
Right.
and then it was taken private by a private equity company, and they brought in a CEO to run the company as a private company,
Okay.
and the CEO, of course, brought on his team, and I was part of that team
Great.
that joined. We joined because this company, while it had 1,800 employees in 28, 30 countries and making money, it was going in the wrong direction. It was
Okay.
not profitable anymore. It needed to be restructured. They had gone through a lot of refinancing to manage the debt that they had. When private equity took them private, there's a lot of debt that was built up in taking them private, but it also, shortly after taking the business the private equity owners bought some other businesses and merged it with Seismic.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it was all on, all of those acquisitions were made through debt financing.
Okay.
So, some lender giving a bunch of money. And so on that basis, over time, that debt became really heavy to service.
Yeah.
And technology being what it is, the infrastructure costs, heavy data costs. Um, and so cash flow issues became really pressing. And so I was brought in, along with some others, to kind of turn the company around and restructure the company.
Okay. So you came on board to this company that was having some difficulties
Yeah,
maintaining its growth.
distressed is
Yeah.
what they call it.
So what were some of the immediate challenges that you faced when in your role as you came in?
Yeah.
Some of the things you had to deal with.
So I had two hats, right? I had strategy hat and I had a legal hat. On the legal side, we are dealing with data and technology, lots of privacy issues, um, lots of issues around permissions, and also intellectual property. So things that are heavy issues that need detailed scoping and a lengthy negotiation process. All of that means, well, what the lengthy negotiation process and and lengthy contracting means that revenue generation could get slowed down.
Right.
So on the one hand, the company's distressed, so you want to get money in as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you're dealing with substance and you're dealing with a product or services that are complicated, so you need to go through a lengthy cycle before you're able to finalize the deal to get
Gotcha.
the money in.
Yeah.
So there's pressure on the legal side to say, get things done, get it moving, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so raising the risk on that level. On the strategy side, right, when a company is losing money, it the fact that it's in 30 countries with all that sprawl, all those operations and all those people in those local countries and all the rules and all of the various accommodations that you have to make is not a great thing. So you have to start immediately thinking about how to right size your footprint, how to make your footprint, less broad or less narrow, or more
Right.
fit to what the size of the business or to the condition of the business. So those are some of the challenges. And, that means that on the legal side, as I said, if you're not able to close the deals quickly enough,
Mm.
the revenue guys are mad, and fingers are pointed as to why deals are not closing.
Sure.
It's a legal department or whatever. So managing the team to be responsible, but at the same time quick.
Yeah.
And on the strategy side, thinking about, okay, people are the heart of the business, but maybe we shouldn't be having this many heads in within the business. Maybe we shouldn't be having it in this many locations. So, but
Yeah.
where do we start? Customers, we're servicing customers everywhere. So if we close an office, some customers are going to be mad, not to mention our employees that love the companies and
Yeah.
actually came onto the company or are with the company thinking that this company will at some point will be sold and they'll be able to make a lot of money. And here we are
Right.
thinking about letting them go. So
Yeah.
those are some of the challenges, immediate challenges.
Gotcha. And many of these challenges you inherited, they were there when you arrived. They weren't by your own
Absolutely.
hand. So that
Absolutely.
in some ways it presents an additional problem because then you've got a people problem because you're managing relationships with people who don't know you. They don't necessarily know what you're doing or trying to do. So there's a
Yeah,
trust issue. But you
absolutely.
you have a mandate to turn this thing around
That's
and
right.
deal with the challenges. So talk to me about some of the people
Yeah.
challenges that you confronted in those early times.
So, typically when you come in to a business like that, distressed business, one of the reasons that I was there and others like me were there is because we were not familiar with the business. We can make the tough decisions and we're not sentimental about it or as sentimental about it because we're newer. So we don't have the background or the history, et cetera. So on the one hand, not knowing people build does tend to cause people you need to manage or people you need to work with you to be distrustful
Sure.
or not be trustful
Mm.
because there's not a track history.
Yeah.
On the other hand, um, so on the employee side, there's that distrust. On the ownership side, the hope is that because you don't have history, you'll make the tough decisions
Right.
that others would not make. Right. So when I came in, I managed and I operate on the basis of trust. I'm an empathetic guy. I I think people are what matter in almost every situation. If I look around and I don't, and I'm surrounded by people that are not motivated, that are not good, just natural, good in their nature, I'm concerned because I know that that's not a solution for a long time win.
Yeah.
So having that distrust, but knowing that I would make some tough decisions, was not just something that was uh, clear to me. It was also clear to all the employees that I was dealing with. So in every interaction, I'm aware what's in people's minds, right? And so managing through that and helping them understand that, yeah, maybe there's a remit to get this business into good shape, but it's going to be done the right way, and we're going to need a lot of people to do that. And the reality is, yes, there won't everybody may not be able to join the party
Yeah.
or be in it for the long run, but a lot of people will, and
Sure.
we're going to try to do the best we can. So that's some of the challenges. And then on the other side, on the management side, kind of I tend to again sort of manage by winning people over. So on the
Great.
management side, convincing them that that kind of strategy works.
Yeah. Okay.
That you have to kind of be use a scalpel as opposed to a butcher's knife or
Yeah.
something like that,
Great.
and be more conscientious. So on the conscientious, that's kind of to the approach that I took to the management team.
Great. And so what are some of the things that you would do on a practical level to build
Yeah.
relationship with someone who has an inherent mistrust of you because they've not really they don't know you. They come with assumptions. So how do you start by building trust and rapport with those people you have to lead?
Yeah, in business, to me, in business, it is the foundation has to be that they have to know that you're competent.
Yeah.
Now, that may not sound great, if you come from sort of the school of being nice or being kind, etc. I would say that's foundation, right? So as great as you want to be in things, and as much as you think that you know uh, the goodness principle will carry through,
Mm.
that opportunity will only be there if you're competent. So the
Okay.
number one thing I want to wanted to establish with everybody is kind of in the roles that I'm in or in the positions that I'm in, I want you to know that I know what I'm doing,
Yeah.
right? And I've got to win them over that way first.
Sure.
I've got to know that, if I'm managing somebody or if I'm collaborating with somebody, they've got to know that I'm here to help.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever the decision is that today, I'm here to help and I've
Yeah.
got to help.
Right.
So I've got to kind of have that hat on about being a productive contributor to somebody else winning in the near term,
Yeah.
regardless of what the decisions are in the future. I've got to formulate my tactics to make sure that I'm contributing to whatever that person, whatever it is that
Right.
is the win for the people around me.
Yeah. So you're
Right. So
adding
that's
value to them.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that I need to be competent because
Of
this is
course.
complex stuff. All of business is complex, right? And if I have clear competency, I can be as nice as I want to be, but
Yeah.
it's not helping anybody, right? And
Yeah.
so that's one. And then of course, if that's there, that helps you go a long way. If they know that you can help,
Right.
that will make a difference.
Great.
On top of that, I would say, in addition to that, or to build on that, um, they have to trust you. So
Mm.
trust meaning, notwithstanding who you are, what your agenda may be, trust you that you are that you're principled. That
Yeah.
when you say something, that you mean what you say,
Right.
and when you receive something, if it's in confidence, it's kept in
Great.
confidence. That when you communicate something, you have integrity about it.
Great.
That even if it's something bad, that you're upfront about it,
Yeah.
as opposed to getting something out of them, while and then saving the bad news, which will be the most important thing in their life,
Sure.
for a later time.
Sure.
Right. So kind of, that they have to understand that you're principled, that you have integrity. Again, that takes time, right? And
Yeah.
but people, no matter what, I've found, no matter who they are, every position, from the highest in the company to the lowest in the lowest, whatever position in the company, right?
Yeah.
People are great at gauging, who
Yeah.
you are. They've
Okay.
got their, God has kind of instilled something in people.
Yeah.
Their antennas pick up everything. Like
Yeah.
you're not fooling anybody.
Yeah.
So, that authenticity is a component of integrity and principles. Because I don't think you can being a principled person or having integrity.
Yeah.
So I think
I agree. I
authenticity.
think disingenuous people are very easy to spot. You can tell when
Absolutely,
someone's being nice to with an agenda. Um,
totally. And
yeah.
and people see it a mile away, right?
Yeah.
You're not fooling anybody with that.
So true. So true. That's great. I just want to unpack a little bit of what you said there. You talked about competence and how you need to know what you're doing, and people need to be able to see that you can contribute to what they're doing. Sometimes as a leader, while competence may be essential, you may not be the expert in the room. You may have
Yeah,
people on your team who are experts. How do you lead somebody who perhaps is more competent than you in that area and
yeah.
demonstrate your ability and your right to be there, even though perhaps they know more about it than you do because that's their place of expertise?
Yeah, I think that, you know, if you are competent in something, and it doesn't need to me, competence does not mean subject matter expertise, right?
Right,
Competence means that, it may be that you're able to bundle it together for the benefit in one
right,
equation.
right.
On another equation, you're the knowledge person.
Okay.
So the competence, the flavor of competence that you bring into a particular situation may vary.
Right,
So, competence will say in a particular situation, you know what? I don't know the latest on this, or I don't know the best on this, but I think that I know, I know how I could get there,
yeah,
whether it's another person or whether it's another resource, whatever it is, right? In another instance, a competence may exactly say, listen, I've been through this 100 times. This is the answer,
yeah,
right? So it's competence allows you to filter to the best outcome for that particular situation.
yeah,
And your background, your experience, the segment, the industry, all those things matter
yeah,
when you're defining competence.
yeah. And so would you say it's really the ability to see the bigger picture and where they find themselves within that bigger picture? I find with a lot of experts, they are very focused and very intentional about where they are located, but don't
Yeah,
necessarily see how they plug into the bigger, in the
yeah.
corporation, or they're part of the team. And so as a leader, you've got to be able to locate them inside of a much bigger, more complex network of operation.
I think that's absolutely right. The bigger the sort of enterprise, the more segments that an enterprise services,
Yeah.
the more you have to think bigger picture.
Yeah.
You have to and you have to think big. Now, I will add this: I am weary of people who only think big and are
Yeah.
not good at diving deep into details
Right.
where necessary.
Okay.
But but I totally agree that leaders have to have the big picture in mind. They have to understand where things are going, and not just understand, drive them to drive things to a place that is the bigger picture journey.
Yeah.
Um, but I also think that you have to have the ability, and you may not exercise that ability in every instant, but you have to have the ability to dig deep, to dive deep and look into the details where necessary.
Yeah, it's like that, holding that tension between the two. It's not either or, but like Les McEwen talks about in Predictable Success, about the three leadership styles that are essential for a growing organization. He talks about the visionary, the processor, and the doer. And very
Mhm.
often, each of those styles will try to work independently of each other, but sooner or later, they find they need the other qualities to actually succeed.
Sure,
So, if as
sure.
a leader, if you can develop those other traits in yourself, if it's not necessarily a strength, you're saying that that's really where you start to gain traction with people across the board.
Yeah, I think you need to understand, like, and you need to have an area where you're able to bridge. I mean, if you were to use that paradigm of a leader, a processor, and a doer, right? Somewhere along the line, there's got to be an integration point between among the three.
Yeah.
So the processor has to kind of appreciate the leader's perspective enough to process it and pass it on, translate it for the doer.
Yeah.
And so you would think that the processor is the one that needs to integrate most, but I don't think so. I think all of them need to integrate because
Yeah.
as a leader, you need to understand that there's a doer who actually needs to implement or
Right.
execute whatever it is you're proposing,
Yeah.
and you have to kind of think broadly, but think about how the doers are going to be able to activate whatever it is that is being
Sure.
put together. Yeah, so I think you have to, I think you have to have the skill set as a leader to
Yeah.
think across those things, even if you don't need to operate in those across all things all the time.
Great. That's all. So a lot of people that listen to my podcast are small business owners or
Yeah,
church leaders, or maybe people who are leading in a middle management
yeah,
capacity. And so they don't necessarily have that top level view a lot of the time. For small business owners, very often they are the doer, the processor, and the
yeah,
visionary,
yep.
and they're trying to do everything. What are some suggestions that you could give to develop those high level skills of being able to interface those different areas of business and leadership that maybe some listeners may be struggling with?
Yeah, just to finish out the story, and I'll answer your question
Mm,
directly, but just to finish out the story on Seismic, shortly after I joined Seismic, our secured lender or creditor exercised remedies because we were not able to make a payment
right.
or put an investment into the back into the business
Yeah.
as promised to them. So exercise remedies, meaning they swept our accounts,
Mm,
so lost millions of dollars, gone, couldn't make payroll, et cetera. So we filed for bankruptcy
right.
and then went through a structured bankruptcy. And as part of that bankruptcy, we sold part of the business, a big part of the business, to
Right.
Amazon.
So
But
that's a big deal in and of itself. You're dealing with a
I mean,
lot of
that's
distressed people when that
distressed
happens.
people and everything's coming in. You have no money. You
Yeah.
have customers. You have people who need to be paid, employees, vendors, governments, taxes, and all your money's been swept.
Wow.
Think about that as to how you would manage that. And in the middle of that, you got to figure out, is there a way I can keep technology, which expires if somebody's not watching it,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
not like fruit that's around for whenever or whatever period of time.
Yeah.
How to keep this going long enough that you can sell it to somebody who thinks that they who 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 would buy it if it's valuable enough.
Okay.
So
So, so how did you do that? How do you navigate people, infrastructure, creditors, and still manage to sell a company, in that
yeah,
kind of distressed atmosphere?
I think when everything is coming at you at once, I mean, you've got hundreds of emails from everybody, and everything is basically saying, help,
Yeah.
give me my money, or what's my future,
Yeah.
or something of that nature. What you got to quickly do is filter through what needs to be done right now.
Right.
Among all of this noise, what's
Yeah.
the noise that needs to be addressed right now,
Yeah.
and what's the noise that can be addressed next
Right.
or later,
Okay.
or it won't take down the ship.
Okay.
And that's not an easy exercise. It's an exercise of filtering to know what you can manage and what needs to be
Yeah.
managed for now so that you can have it tomorrow. Whereas there may be other urgent things
Yeah.
that ideally would be managed today.
Yeah.
Ideally would be managed today, but in this environment, we can manage it later, and
Right.
we probably will have it tomorrow.
Okay. Gotcha. So you've really got to figure out what's going to be most crucial for the tomorrow, rather than, because everybody, when everybody's panicking, everyone brings a sense of urgency to
Everyone.
their
Their
thing.
issue is the most
Their
urgent.
issue is the most urgent. And so as a leader, you've got to be able to decipher what's going to give us a tomorrow
That's right.
and not just have to focus on the urgency of today.
That's
Yeah.
right. I mean, think about it.
That's great.
If you have 1,500, 1,800 employees, if
Mm.
one employee doesn't know, and the fact of bankruptcy is known by everybody in the
Yeah.
company. So, and the fact that money's been swept and there's no money, it was known by everybody.
Right.
So if one employee doesn't know that, they're going to ask, hey, why should I keep working for you?
Right.
What's the plan? I mean, I'm leaving,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's no money. Why would I do that? So that's one.
Yeah.
And imagine having hundreds and thousands of employees.
Of course.
And imagine, government saying and I was a director of the company in various locations, and there are rules in those locations that if that particular unit of that company is insolvent, then I have to declare it as such,
Right.
right, as a director of the company. And if you don't declare, there's penalties, etc. On the other hand, if you do declare something is insolvent, then the receiver takes over, and you may not be able to sell the company as a whole to somebody who wants to buy it.
Okay. Right.
So so there's lots of complexities that you don't even think about until you're in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely, you filter through to what's important, um, and you manage your 22-hour days as best you can,
Yeah.
by living for tomorrow.
Wow.
But it does give you bring you to the reality that, hey, something that I do may not work out, and it may be the difference between not having a tomorrow from a company sense,
Yeah.
versus having a bright future.
Amazing. So you've navigated this season. What sort of led you to the place where you were able to sell to Amazon and actually move in with Amazon and start working with them as well?
Yeah. So even during the tough times, I mean, during the tough times, you have to, as I said, really, really know what's important. But even during the tough times, the only way to get through it is to see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
You've got to make yourself believe a narrative
Yeah.
that there's light at the end of the tunnel,
Okay.
and make yourself believe is not an unrealistic. You've got to find the narrative that in this situation, here's what it's about,
Yeah.
and you've got to sell it to everybody.
Yeah.
I know we talked. I know we came into this saying we're going to be, selling ourselves as an IPO and all of that.
Yeah.
That's not going to be happening.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what is going to be happening. Okay, we're going to be doing this. We're going to stabilize, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that.
Yeah.
And if that happens, we're going to be here. Now, there are going to be some people that we're going to have to release along the way, and some people are going to be leaving on their own. But I believe that, if you stay, or for those who stay, we've got a real shot at this.
Right.
So there's got to be a new narrative that you got to develop, and that brings hope to all those around you and to yourself.
Yeah. That's the key word, isn't it? Hope. You're really a hope dealer in those kind of situations, aren't you?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
how do you as a leader keep yourself in check, because it's very hard to deal hope when you got the weight of the world on yourself, and you're trying to balance the stress and your own personal insecurities and fears along the way, but
Yeah.
not allow that to impact the people you lead. How do you manage your internal life when you're trying to be a hope dealer for people who are in that desperate
You know,
situation?
for me, everything is anchored on my faith,
Yeah,
right? I've got to believe that my God has a plan for me,
yeah,
right? Even in this situation, and maybe the plan is for me not to succeed with the new narrative. Maybe that's it. Well, then that's fine. If that's the case, I'm okay with that,
okay,
right? So my faith is a big part of it. I'm the sole provider for my family, so all of those things naturally come up. What, do you even believe this? And shouldn't you be looking out for yourself right
yeah,
now?
yeah,
And so those things come up. But what kept me grounded, I wouldn't say grounded, what kept me hopeful
yeah,
was my faith.
it's great.
There's kind of faith with realism. I mean, I never stepped out of reality. Like, I didn't try to believe in a future that, realistically I couldn't design.
Yeah,
Yes, some things had to go right, and some things had to go in my favor, but they could, and that so there was a real light, a potential for light at the end of the tunnel,
great.
and my faith was critical. My family believed in me, even during this tough time. Initially,
Yeah,
my family was like, "What are you doing? What's the point? Let's
yeah,
just walk away. Look at this, right?" But then, as we talked through these things, we got the opportunity to say, maybe something good will come about from it.
yeah. That's so good. And what about your family? I mean, it's hard being when you're under that kind of pressure. Your business needs your attention. I mean, you alluded to 22-hour days at some point. How do you manage family in all of that? Because it's not as cut and dry as you clock in at 9 o'clock and you go home at 5 o'clock. You're on
Yeah.
call almost.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, the my role was as part of the management team was, you know, even in that distress situation, in line with the expectation of being, a senior member of the organization. What I mean by that is, it's not like all of a sudden I have this huge responsibility.
Sure.
I had responsibilities. It's just that it's kind of in the middle of the fire.
Yeah.
So my family setting was such that, you know, they were accustomed to me at certain times working longer hours,
Right.
and I kind of, my wife and others, you know, cooperated in that sense
Sure.
previously. It's just that now it was to the next level.
Right.
So, and so I would say that you have to be very upfront, open, and your family has to understand and agree to the plan.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Okay.
otherwise it falls apart. I had colleagues of mine at part of the management team where it fell apart for them
Right.
along the way.
Right.
I mean, we kind of held them together, and they got to it also. But lots of issues in their family situation because
Yeah.
if you're with your family has to believe that there's a future for them too. Otherwise, they're going to
Yeah.
be they're not going to understand what you're still doing there.
Yeah.
So for me, given that I was expected to be part of the management team, and my family understood, they also understood that for a period of time,
Yeah.
I have to go even to the next level.
Sure. So it's good communication, open communication, but also really you're leading your family in the process. As much as you're being a
Right.
hope dealer for the people you lead, you're also being a hope dealer for your family, and trying to ensure that they understand exactly where you're at and there's no mystery surrounding what you're trying to achieve. They're
That's right.
in it with you, and
That's right.
yeah, that's such great advice. I love that, George. You're now with Amazon. Have
Yeah.
things settled down? Is it you know what's the future look like now?
Amazon is a huge place, lots of opportunities. Things have, to answer your question, things have settled down significantly.
Yeah,
I'm still very busy and active, and
sure.
there's a lot on my plate, and there's still a lot of integration activities for the business I was acquired to be integrated into the larger Amazon, business segments. But it's certainly not the free for all that I was in, or the free fall that I was in before.
Yeah,
With Amazon, I'm always looking for things that motivate me and help me be even more energized when I wake up in the morning. I've
Great.
got to get up in the morning and be energized and want to
Yeah.
do what I do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's very hard for me to operate.
Yeah.
So, fortunately, there are a number of areas that I see as things that I could build, even
Great.
within a larger company like that. There are areas I could build,
That's great.
and smart people around that I could build with.
Yeah.
So that I'm sort of in that evaluation phase of what's the environment that I can develop in here
Yeah.
that will give me that opportunity to build something, see something grow, and take it to the next level. And so, um, yeah, so that's kind of what it is. It's also about developing relationships, developing that kind of confidence in the people around you,
Yeah.
through your competence, through your authenticity, through your integrity, so that when you are in the position to propose ideas about the things you want to build,
Yeah.
that there's buy-in.
Great. That's fantastic. I know that you've got another call to get on to soon, and so I want to be wary of that time. But uh, Evan said I have to ask you about your thoughts on what does a post-COVID economy look like, and I guess one of the big things we've seen through this whole worldwide pandemic has been the flourishing of the use of the internet, and the internet as being the place where people have been able to maintain their businesses and connection. And so you're obviously in that space. What does it look like, do you think, coming out of these global shutdowns? How do you think the economy is going to shift, or business as we know it is going to shift? Have you got any thoughts on that you can share with us?
Yeah, yes, yes, I do. I mean, if you look at what has happened, hospitality has been severely affected.
Yeah.
Travel industries have been severely affected. Um, Retail that is physical in nature has been, severely affected.
Yeah.
Um, Churches and nonprofits have been severely affected. On the other side, media has been affected severely, but in the positive direction, right? There's
Sure.
more people online watching more stuff
Yeah.
than ever before, more
Yeah.
people buying stuff through online than ever before. So the trends for me are this. The trend is that um, people, even the demographics who were not very reliant
Yeah.
on online
Yeah.
have become more reliant.
Right.
Even people who did not spend a lot of time consuming
Yeah.
media have now spent a lot of time consuming media.
Yeah.
So I think but I don't necessarily think that it means that, it means that a lot of the businesses that weren't a big part of that online community are going to be, gone. I do think some of them are going to be gone because they're not going to be able to survive the near term challenges.
Yeah.
But what I do think it means also is that the smaller companies, or the companies that were not in that sort of paradigm before,
Yeah.
they will adopt to be more like we're doing now, right?
Okay.
They'll adopt their services to be more of, to fit the new way of working, if you
Right.
will,
Yeah.
right? Um, and then the demand will come up, and they'll still have what was their legacy business framework, but they'll be much more accommodating of new ways to deliver and new ways to experience their business. So I
Great.
think that's what's coming. I also think that people, believe it or not, are going to get, more territorial, because, you're realizing that, access to things that are vital in and near you is very important,
Yeah.
right? If it has to get here from 3 geographies away,
Right.
in an emergency situation, that may be too long.
Yeah, I think
So
you're right there. That whole shopping online experience, I now look for suppliers in Australia, whereas once upon a time I would have brought from the US or China, but the delivery times are so long now that
that's
it's
right.
not viable. So
That's
it will
right.
change manufacturing, and it will change supply chains as well, won't it?
It absolutely will, and it'll change. It'll change events. Live events. At least in the near, you're not going to be able to cram everybody together. There's going to be lots of sort of
Yeah.
changes like that, and planes are not going to be able to cram people together. You're going to have to
Right.
expand room. Make room for everybody for social distancing, etc. And COVID is what's driving the storyline today. But some form of COVID could be the next thing. There's just
Sure.
a lot of people in this world, a lot more than there were here, even just a couple of decades ago.
Yeah. So should we? I mean, a lot of people say I can't wait till it gets back to normal. I mean, I kind of think we're not going to go back to normal. It's going
We're
to
in
be
the
a
new norm.
different norm. But should we be hoping for what we used to have, or should we be embracing the new paradigm as a better way to do things? I kind of think that if we've been able to adapt through this, it positions us for more stability if and the next COVID comes along, or the next whatever it is comes along,
That's right.
we're better positioned to respond. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I listen. It's always sad when you look at the carnage.
Yeah,
When you look at, meaning people who died, families who've had members of their family pass away. When you
yeah,
look at businesses that had to close down, when you look at the financial destruction inevitable that has happened and that's happening. But I think that the only thought in my mind is that you know the world has shifted
yeah,
and there's a new reality, and at the end of it, you know you may say, well, wasn't it nice to do things the old fashioned way? Maybe, but
yeah,
there's going to be a lot of things that are done better the new way,
yeah.
the new norm way, right? And
Sure.
so, you will adjust and we will thrive. Some areas will not be the same again,
Yeah,
but there are going to be new areas and new opportunities and new ways of working. I mean, we're going to come into the reality of what it is now, that we live in a world where these
yeah,
things can spread very quickly. So we want to be managing and thriving under those circumstances.
yeah. That's fantastic. Such good advice, George. I think I need to have you on again so we can continue talking, because I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I found it
Thank
absolutely
you.
fascinating. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank
If
you.
people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do it? Do you send them to your LinkedIn, or do you have a website? What's your preferred means of
Yeah, I mean,
communication?
LinkedIn is a good way to go.
Okay.
George Pappachen is my LinkedIn. Is probably the best way to connect with me. Is
Yeah.
There are other ways as well, but that's probably the easiest way.
Okay, no worries. Well, I'm going to put a link in the description for anyone that wants to get in touch with George. But, George, thank you so much again for your time. Any last thoughts you'd like to share with leaders before we close out today?
Yeah, I think my thought is, small business, medium-sized business, large business. My thought to leaders today is this: I know that it's easy to think about what about tomorrow, and you need to think about that. But you know, it's still the leader's responsibility to think about not just about tomorrow, but what about next week, and
Yeah.
what about next year, because you're going to be around.
Yeah.
And the question is going to be whether you're going to be driving the agenda for something that is the size of what you have now, or
Mhm.
for something that's much greater.
Right. Fantastic. Such great advice. Thank you, George, so much.
Nice to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you got a ton of value out of that. Don't forget to like, comment, and share with somebody who you think will benefit. And make sure you check the description for the free resources that I want to send your way to help you in your growth journey. Until next time, I'm Tarun Stevenson, helping you lead, communicate, and grow to your full potential.